Hey guys, tonight we're taking you somewhere dusty, desperate, and just a little bit delusional. Imagine this. It's dawn on the endless plains. The sky's a watercolor of pink and gold. The wind's already whistling through brittle grass, and you're curled on a pile of itchy wool under a leaky canvas tarp, mouth dry, legs cramped, and a questionable smell wafting up from your socks. Welcome to the Wild West, the version they don't show you in the movies. Sure, you've seen the cool parts on screen, gunslinging heroes, horses galloping in slow motion, sunlit saloons. But you, my friend, are not Clint Eastwood. You're not even Clint's slightly confused cousin with a limp mule and a faulty compass. This is real frontier life. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the kind of morning cold that bites. There's no snooze button here, no electric blanket, just the stiff crackle of your joints and the realization that sometime during the night, your blanket wandered off, possibly with the mule. Your breath fogs the air, and somewhere nearby, a prairie dog chirps mockingly. Step one of surviving your Wild West day: find breakfast. And, well, you're out of luck. You forgot to store your biscuits properly and now they're soggy from dew, or maybe that's just mildew. You chew anyway, because you're hungry and because it's either this or the mysterious jerky that may or may not be squirrel. A coffee, please. You left your tin percolator by the creek 3 days ago, and even if you had it, there's no clean water. You suck a pebble instead, which surprisingly is something people actually did to generate saliva. Tasty. You trudge across the brittle field, boots crunching frost-covered grass, looking for something edible. There's a bush with some berries. Are they poisonous? You sniff them. They smell like sadness. Historians still argue whether settlers regularly poisoned themselves with wild edibles or just mostly did. Now your stomach is still empty, and your back aches because that bedroll is essentially burlap over gravel. You stretch, or try to, only to hear something hiss behind you. You freeze. Rattlesnake. It's coiled near your boot, tongue flickering, judging you. Slowly, so slowly, you back away, heart pounding like a war drum. Remember, no boots equals no toes, and no toes equals not ideal when you're hiking 12 miles to the nearest town. The snake slithers off, probably insulted by your general lack of frontier competence. Congratulations, you're still alive, but barely. Time to saddle up. Or, well, locate your mule. You tied him to a tree last night. He's no longer there. Just a bit of rope and a generous pile of dung, steaming slightly in the morning chill. You panic walk in circles until you spot him, half a mile away, munching on someone else's fence. You sigh and jog toward him, lungs tight in the crisp air. By the time you drag him back to camp, he's decided he's the boss now. You slap the saddle on. It's too loose. You adjust it. Too tight. He brays at you. You may be allergic to mules. Historians still debate whether the psychological trauma of livestock stubbornness was a measurable factor in settler mortality. You'd argue yes. Eventually, you mount awkwardly. He starts walking sideways. Fine, you'll settle for sideways. As the sun rises, the air heats rapidly, going from icy to sweaty in about 10 minutes. You shed your coat, bad idea. The wind picks up, and suddenly you're cold and sunburnt. You pass a cactus and consider drinking it. It looks like something you saw in a survival show once. You touch it. It stabs you. You bleed. Nature says no. Now you're parched, cranky, and very aware that you haven't brushed your teeth in 2 weeks. You try to swish some water from your canteen. It tastes like metal and despair. You spit it out and immediately regret it. By midday, the heat is unbearable. You drape a bandana over your face. It helps for 5 seconds. Then it gets sweaty. You pull it down. Dust blows into your nose. Pick your poison. You find a shady rock and slump down. The silence is eerie. There's no hum of AC units, no car alarms, just distant howling wind and an occasional vulture circling overhead, probably measuring your likelihood of survival. Spoiler: low. Your hands are cracked. Your lips are peeling. And you just realized your last bar of soap melted 3 towns ago. You nap for 20 minutes until the sun moves and your shade becomes oven-grade heat. You stumble to your feet and keep going, past abandoned wagons, past bones that may or may not be human. You think about turning back. Then you realize you don't actually know where back is. At some point, you step into a prairie dog hole and twist your ankle. Pain flares up your leg like a spark catching dry grass. You yelp, startling your mule, who takes 3 steps forward and promptly sits down. You limp to a rock and sit beside him. He chews something. You try to pet him. He snaps at your hand. You respect his boundaries. The sun begins to lower, casting long, ominous shadows. You're still hungry. You find a dusty tin of beans in your bag. You open it with a rusted knife and slurp the cold contents with trembling fingers. Not bad, actually, except for the crunchy bit. You don't want to know what that was. Finally, you reach a sign. It says, "Welcome to DUSTWALLOW." The sign is barely legible, peppered with bullet holes and swinging from one nail. There's a town nearby, maybe not. You press on past a row of rickety fences and into a clearing where a single shack leans at a dangerous angle. You knock. No answer. You peek inside. Empty, except for a broken chair, an empty bottle of laudanum, and a pair of shoes with someone's feet still in them. You decide to keep walking. Darkness creeps in. Coyotes howl. Your mule refuses to move. You sit on a stump, exhausted, eyes heavy. You made it through one day. Kind of, barely, technically. But hey, no snake bites. That's a win, right? Right. You wake again, not because of a rooster or a gentle sunrise, but because something is poking your back. Hard. You fumble around groggily and discover you've been sleeping on a rock the size of a baked potato. You move to sit up and immediately regret it. Every part of you aches. Your ankle throbs from yesterday's prairie dog hole mishap, and the cold morning air slices through your jacket like it's made of wet tissue. Nature has not installed a snooze button. Welcome back. The good news, you didn't freeze to death. The bad news, your bladder is very, very full. It's time to find the outhouse. Or if you're still in the open, dig a cat hole with your busted knife. But you remember spotting a structure nearby, a splintery shack with a moon carved into the door. Classic outhouse aesthetics. You hobble over, dodging cow patties and more mysterious, slightly smoking piles of mule judgment. The door creaks open on rusty hinges. Inside, it's a horror show. Cobwebs blanket the corners. A spider the size of a silver dollar sits smugly by the seat. The stench is robust, like fermented beans and shame. You close the door behind you and brace yourself. The seat is freezing. You hover. You question every decision that brought you to this place. You finish your business with minimal trauma. You reach for toilet paper. There isn't any. Just a corncob. One corncob. This isn't a myth, by the way. Some folks genuinely used them, cleaned them, and reused them. Historians still argue whether settlers did this out of necessity or sheer, baffling stubbornness. You choose dignity and limp out. Now you're parched again. You consider your canteen but remember the flavor profile, metal plus emotional damage. So you set off toward the creek. It's about 4 miles east, you think. The terrain is dry, cracked, and unkind. Your mule is no help. He walks 10 paces, stops to chew something invisible, then glares like you're the problem. Eventually, you reach the creek. And yes, water, sort of. It's brown, shallow, and suspiciously bubbly. You lean down to scoop some, but pause. There could be parasites, or worse, cow upstream. So you use your purification system, which is just boiling. But you left your tin pot behind. Again, you try filtering it through a handkerchief. It makes you feel proactive, but it still tastes like muddy regret. You drink anyway. Moments later, your stomach makes a noise that should be studied by scientists. You sit by the water and wait, hoping not to explode. While you wait, you swat away flies. One lands in your ear. Another gets dangerously close to your eye. You slap wildly. Your mule wanders off. You find him half an hour later flirting with a cactus. You drag him back and decide maybe it's time to eat something. You rifle through your bag, 2 moldy biscuits, a piece of cheese that now resembles a fossil, and a stick of what might have once been bacon. You nibble it. It tastes like leather. You chew anyway. You hear hoofbeats and freeze. A rider approaches from the east, silhouetted by the rising sun. Your heart jumps. Maybe help, maybe danger. You try to look confident or invisible. As he gets closer, You see he's older, with a hat bigger than your torso and a rifle slung across his back. He nods. "Mornin'," he says. You nod back. "Water's a little rough," you offer, hoping small talk might make you less shootable. Oh, he spits. "Ain't dead yet." Then rides on. Wild West wisdom. You decide to press on toward town. Your legs protest. Your mule farts. You persist. You pass a broken fence and a crumbling cabin. A buzzard watches you from a post. You wave. It does not wave back. By noon, the heat is punishing. You peel off your coat again, but this time you smartly fold it and tie it to your saddle. Progress. You consider washing in the creek, but remember the last time. Leeches. You shudder. Eventually, you reach a dry patch of land with what looks like a barrel and maybe, just maybe, a well. You approach with hope. There's a crank and a bucket. You lower it down slowly. There's resistance. Then splash. You raise it, and inside is a frog, just a frog, floating calmly like a tiny amphibian landlord guarding his kingdom. You dump it out and try again. The second time, it's clear, cold, slightly metallic. But after this morning's swamp tea, it's gourmet. You drink, then splash some on your face. It burns your eyes. You realize there's something in the water. But hey, at least your skin is damp. Hydration by proximity. By mid-afternoon, you're back on your mule, riding toward Dustwallow proper. The road is bumpy, rutted, and filled with more dung than seems statistically reasonable. You dodge piles with the reflexes of a dancer, a very slow, saddle-sore dancer. You finally arrive at the town's edge. It's quiet, too quiet as the cliché goes. One building is labeled General Store. You limp inside. There's a woman behind the counter, reading a paper. She glances up. "New in town?" she asks. You nod. "Bathrooms out back. Don't mind the rats." You thank her and buy a chunk of bread that's more brick than loaf. You chew anyway. You also pick up a bottle labeled Dr. Smith's Restorative Elixir. The label says it cures everything from cholera to gout to marital distress. You drink a sip. It tastes like alcohol, sugar, and possibly root beer. You feel slightly better, or at least buzzed. Outside, the sun dips. Evening settles like a blanket, one filled with cactus needles. You walk to the saloon. It creaks as you enter. Inside, 3 old men, a piano with one key working, and a barkeep who looks like he's been awake since 1847. "Whiskey," he offers. You ask for water. He stares at you. You want what? You take the whiskey. You sit in a corner, nursing your drink, nibbling your rock loaf, and listening to a man snore loudly into a spittoon. You don't know where your mule is. You don't care. Eventually, you stagger outside. The stars overhead are brilliant, endless, sparkling, and utterly indifferent to your suffering. You find a quiet patch of dirt and unroll your bedroll. Again, You lie down, your body sore, your spirit brittle, your boots still damp. You survived another day. Barely. You wake with a groan. It's still dark, which means it's either just before dawn or you've somehow offended a time god and been sentenced to eternal early mornings. Your back feels like a series of snapped fence posts, and your ankle, remember that prairie dog ambush, has swollen to the size of a small apple. Your mule, however, is suspiciously well-rested. He's standing 10 feet away, staring at you like you're the burden in this relationship. You brush off the night's dust from your clothes. Futile, because dust in the Wild West is less a substance and more a lifestyle, and reach for your saddle. Saddle sores. You didn't even know that was a real thing, but now you do. Oh, you do. The inside of your thighs feel like they've been gently grated by a pinecone. You try to walk normally, but every step is a symphony of winces and whispered curses. PG-13 ones, like fudge and dang it and why me. Today's mission: keep heading west toward the next outpost. It's only about 20 miles. In theory, if the weather holds, the mule cooperates, and you don't collapse from pain, dehydration, or boredom. You gather your gear, which consists of one saddlebag with crumbs, one dented canteen, a loaf of bread now harder than your emotional resilience, and a map that looks more like a child's drawing of spaghetti than a useful navigation tool. You get the mule saddled after only 2 kicks and a biting attempt, so actually an improvement from yesterday. He's a little less hateful this morning, or maybe you've just reached a level of resignation that feels like peace. You mount up. It hurts. No, it hurts. Your inner thighs threaten to mutiny. The saddle feels like a medieval torture device, specifically designed for anyone who thought riding a horse all day sounds romantic. The trail is uneven, winding through scrubby brush and random boulders that exist purely to trip you or your mule. A jackrabbit darts out at one point. You flinch so hard you nearly fall off. The mule does not react. The mule fears nothing. By mid-morning, the sun has kicked into high gear. No clouds, no shade, just one enormous, flaming reminder that you forgot to make a hat. You tie a damp rag around your head. It dries in minutes and then functions more like a warming pad than a cooling one. As you bounce along the trail, your brain starts drifting. You wonder how people in the 1800s did this every day without going fully insane. Historians still argue whether settlers developed a kind of frontier meditation, staring at the horizon, tuning out the pain, the boredom, the endless clopping sound of hooves. Then your mule stops, dead in his tracks. You lean forward. "What's wrong, buddy?" He twitches one ear, then begins to back up. You squint ahead and realize the trail narrows with a deep ravine to the left. He doesn't like it. You nudge him forward. He turns in a perfect 180 and starts walking back the way you came. The mule, no. You try to steer. He ignores you. You dismount carefully and tug at his bridle. He plants his hooves and looks away, as if deeply offended. It takes a full 20 minutes, a bribe of the last crumbs in your bag, and one dramatic monologue on your part before he begrudgingly moves forward. You remount, which takes longer now because of the searing pain in places you never knew could ache. Back on the trail, you hear buzzing, bees. No, worse. Flies, and more ominously, mosquitoes. You slap at your arms. They're feasting. You didn't think there were mosquitoes in the desert, but these creatures are defying science. One bites your forehead. Another finds your sock line. You start waving like a madman, swerving in the saddle, nearly falling off again. This is your life now, a walking buffet for flying vampires. Eventually, you pass a small caravan heading the opposite way. A family with a wagon, 3 oxen, and expressions that suggest they, too, have redefined the word regret. You wave. They nod. Their youngest child shouts, "Don't go that way. The road's all caved in." The father shushes her. You ponder this as you continue, which means you're now thinking about 2 dangers. Your mule's hatred of narrow paths and the possibility that the trail ahead ends in a sudden vertical experience. You sigh. Later in the afternoon, you find a rocky outcrop and take a break. You slide off the mule and nearly collapse. You stagger toward a puddle that looks like it may once have aspired to be a pond, scoop a handful and pause. There's something swimming in it, tiny, wiggly, possibly sentient. You drink it anyway. You lie back against a rock and stare up at the sky. Buzzards are circling. You wonder if they follow every traveler just in case, like delivery drones, but for death. You snack on some dried fruit you forgot you had. It's possibly older than the town you left. It tastes like sweetened leather, but it's calories, and calories are life. As the sun begins its slow descent, you realize you're not going to make it to the outpost today. Not at this pace. Not with your saddle sores turning into saddle wounds. Not with your mule slowing down and eyeing the bushes like he's planning a sleepover. So you pick a flat patch of ground, tie the mule loosely to a post you fashion from a dead branch, and set up camp. There's no firewood, so no fire. You chew more jerky. This time you're pretty sure it is squirrel. As night falls, the temperature plummets again. You huddle into your blanket, trying to ignore the mosquitoes, the soreness, and the very real concern that you may have stepped in something venomous earlier. You close your eyes and listen. Crickets chirp. A distant coyote howls. Your mule farts again. Peace, Wild West style. You might not survive tomorrow, but you made it through today. Barely. You wake to the sound of your mule chewing something with extraordinary aggression. You lift your head from your rolled-up coat pillow and squint. It's still dark, but there's a sliver of pink bleeding into the horizon. Cold air settles on your face like a wet cloth, and every part of your body protests your decision to exist. Your legs are worse. The saddle sores are now saddle situations. Walking is doable if you favor one side and move with the grace of an injured marionette. You stand up slowly, stretch, and realize you'd sell your soul for a hot breakfast. Which brings us to the dream, the saloon. You imagine it now, swinging doors, clinking glasses, piano music, the sharp laugh of a mysterious card dealer named Layla who may or may not be running from the law. A warm meal, a hot drink, maybe even a soft bed. You reach Dustwell Gulch by mid-morning. It's smaller than you expected. One dirt road, two leaning buildings, a general store, a smithy, and hallelujah, a saloon. It even has the iconic swinging doors. You approach like a pilgrim nearing a holy site. Inside, the reality is different. No piano, no Leela, no smoky atmosphere of intrigue. Instead, you get three locals hunched over a game of checkers and a bartender with one good eye, one glass eye, and a mustache so long it looks like it's plotting an escape. "Welcome," he says. "What'll it be?" You lower yourself onto a creaky bar stool and say the magic word, "Food." He disappears for a moment and returns with a tin plate. On it, cold beans, a hunk of dry bread, and something vaguely egg-shaped but definitely not egg-textured. You eat it anyway. There's also coffee. You sip it. It tastes like it was brewed with regret and shoe polish. But it's hot, and the heat spreads through your chest like hope. As you eat, one of the locals turns to you. He's got a lazy eye and a banjo across his lap. "You from the East?" You nod. Figured you got that soft look, real gentle. You chew your bread a little more defensively. He grins. "Just saying, you might want to toughen up real quick." You finish eating and ask where a traveler might find shelter. "Out back," the bartender says. "There's a lean-to. Don't touch the goats." Goats. You pay with a tarnished coin and step outside. The lean-to is literally that, a collection of warped boards leaning against a wall. One goat eyes you. You nod respectfully. You rest there for an hour. Then, because you're still on a mission, and because standing still means thinking about your aching legs, you saddle up and move on. The land shifts as you ride. The dusty plains give way to rocky hills, and the air grows hotter, drier, like you're riding into the sun's mouth. You pass a patch of scrub brush and spot something strange. Half a wagon wheel sticking out of the ground, like a sunken fossil. You approach, dismount, and brush the dust away. It's a crashed supply cart, long abandoned. There's nothing useful inside except a few rusty tins and a rolled-up newspaper from 1871. The headline reads, "Pigs Escape, Cause Panic at Church Picnic." A historical gem. You take it, fold it into your bag, and ride on. By noon, the heat is unbearable again. You shelter under a rocky outcrop, sharing its sliver of shade with a fat lizard who seems personally annoyed by your presence. You sip your last inch of water and remember that the next creek might be dry. You sigh. Historians still argue, you mutter to no one, whether settlers cried as much as we do about water. The lizard blinks once, judgmentally. Back on the trail, you spot another traveler. He's riding low in his saddle, covered in dust, with a bedroll that looks suspiciously like a curtain. You nod as he approaches. Howdy. He nods. You heading west? I think. Don't. Nothing west but heat, blisters, and scorpions. He rides past. You continue anyway. Because in the Wild West, logic takes a backseat to stubbornness. By evening, you reach a camp, a small circle of stones, still warm from someone else's fire. You settle there, too tired to question the previous occupant's fate. You eat the last of your beans. They taste like copper and sadness. You wash it down with lukewarm water you filtered through your shirt sleeve. That night, you lie under the stars and dream of saloons. It's not the real kind, the movie kind, where the whiskey's always smooth, the women always smirk, and no one eats cold beans with a guy named Skeeter who won't stop talking about his lucky thumb. Oh, right, Skeeter. You met him earlier in the saloon. How did you forget? He sat down beside you halfway through your bread and beans and said, Name S. Skeeter. I lost a toe in 68, gained a thumb in 72. You didn't ask how. You still don't want to know. Skeeters now somehow appeared at this campsite, too. Just as you're bedding down, he wanders up out of the dark with a grin. Mind if I share your fire? He asks. There is no fire, just embers. But you nod, because saying no in the Wild West sometimes leads to duels. He sits down, pulls out a harmonica, plays one wheezing note, and farts. The goats back in Dustwell had better manners. You lie there, listening to Skeeter whistle and mumble about tumbleweeds that once tried to unionize. You might not survive tomorrow. But Skeeter will probably outlive everyone. You wake up to the smell of goat, which is strange because you're miles away from Dustwell and its mutinous lean-to herd. Then you open your eyes. The Skeeter is cooking something over a small fire. It's meat-shaped. Vaguely, might be rabbit, might be goat. You decide not to ask. Mornin', he grins, holding out a stick with a charred chunk on the end. Want some breakfast? You politely decline. He shrugs. More for me might be possum. Might be. You saddle up while Skeeter hums a tune that sounds suspiciously like the sound your mule makes before sneezing. Your legs are no longer sore. They're beyond sore. You're walking like someone wearing stilts made of porcupines. Today's plan: head northwest, try to find the river crossing marked on your map. The one drawn with a squiggly line and the label maybe water. The sun is already up, and with it comes the dreaded reality of Western frontier fashion. Let's talk about the clothes. Your shirt is wool because that's what was available. Thick, itchy, hot. It's soaked in yesterday's sweat, then dried overnight into a salty crust. The pants, also wool, also scratchy, also possibly shrinking. And underneath, absolutely nothing modern. No breathable fabrics, no moisture wicking, just layers of slowly roasting regret. Historians still argue whether early settlers wore wool because it was durable or because they hadn't yet discovered the concept of comfort. The boots, though, they're the real culprits. Stiff leather, unlined, designed by someone who must have hated feet. They squeak, rub, and trap heat like ovens. Your blisters have blisters. You keep riding. Around midday, a breeze picks up. Relief, right? Nope. It carries with it a sandstorm's worth of dust, pelting your face, filling your nostrils, and settling in every crevice of your clothing. Your lips are dry, your eyes sting, and your mule doesn't even flinch. He's clearly seen worse. You wrap a bandana around your face. It helps for 5 minutes. Then it becomes a dust-flavored sauna. A tumbleweed rolls past. Dramatic, pointless, probably judging you. By the time the wind dies down, you're coated in grime. You scratch your arm absently and realize you've just exfoliated with dirt. Great. Spa Day Wild West Edition. You finally spot the river, or what's left of it. It's more of a wide trickle, weaving between rocks like it's ashamed of itself. You dismount, stagger to the edge, and dunk your entire face in. It's ice cold. You gasp, but it tastes like heaven. Then you notice something floating nearby. A hat. Just drifting. You look up and down the bank. No one in sight. You take the hat anyway. It fits, kind of. Smells like old tobacco and desperation. But hey, it shades your face. Across the river, you spot a man standing by a tree, whittling something. He looks up, sees you, and nods. You nod back. Neither of you speaks. Frontier communication at its finest. You cross the river carefully, boots slipping on slick stones. The water reaches mid-thigh and sends a jolt of cold up your spine. Your mule follows behind, surprisingly graceful, because of course he is. You make it across, wet, shivering, but alive. Now the climb. Ahead is a ridge, steep and littered with loose rock. You sigh and start leading your mule upward. It's slow, slippery, exhausting. At one point, a rock slides out from under you. You stumble, grab your mule for balance. He looks offended but holds firm. Halfway up, you rest. A skeeter appears. How'd you get here? You ask, genuinely baffled. He shrugs. Shortcuts, also I don't sleep much. He offers you jerky. You decline. He offers you something in a flask. You accept. It's strong, possibly turpentine. You cough. He nods approvingly. At the top of the ridge, you finally see it. The next town. A cluster of buildings tucked into the valley below, smoke rising from a few chimneys. civilization, or something like it. You ride down, dust trailing behind you like a ragged cape. As you approach, you see a woman hanging laundry on a line, 2 kids chasing a dog, a man chopping wood. The scent of something cooking drifts on the wind, maybe stew, maybe potatoes, maybe dreams. You tie up your mule at a hitching post in front of the boarding house. A bell above the door jingles as you enter. Inside, warmth, wooden floors, a counter. A woman with iron gray hair and an apron greets you with a tight smile. Need a room? You nod. One night's 5 cents includes stew. You nearly weep. You hand her the coin. She hands you a key. The room is upstairs, tiny and perfect. A bed, an actual bed, with sheets. You sit, you sink. You whisper thank you to whatever prairie god oversees weary travelers. Dinner is served at a long table downstairs. You sit with 3 others, one silent, one snoring into his bowl, and one enthusiastically discussing turnips. You nod politely. You eat everything. The stew is thin but warm. The bread is softish. The water is clean. The woman brings out a second helping. You accept with shaking hands. After dinner, you wander out onto the porch. The sky is painted in reds and golds, the sun dipping behind the hills. Skeeter is there, whittling. You sit beside him. A nice view, he says. You nod. He whittles in silence for a minute, then hands you the carving. It's a tiny mule, crooked but charming. You smile. You don't say much. You don't need to. For a moment, the Wild West isn't about heat or dust or dysentery. It's about surviving, barely, together. You head back inside. Climb into the bed. Close your eyes. And fall asleep in a place with walls, a roof, and no visible goats. Progress. You sleep like a corpse, still, heavy, oblivious to time and space. When you wake, the bed beneath you feels like a miracle. Not a soft bed, exactly. This mattress is about as forgiving as a barn door, but compared to dirt, rocks, and Skeeter's foot occasionally landing on your face during sleep, paradise. Morning light creeps through the wooden shutters. You sit up slowly. Your back pops audibly. Your knees creak like saloon doors, but you feel marginally less like death. You even smell better, which might just be the boarding house's soap bar tucked under the pillow for ambience. You note the luxury. Downstairs, breakfast is happening. You shuffle to the communal table, where the gray-haired woman is ladling something resembling porridge into bowls. There's even coffee. You drink it while it's still hot, and for once, it doesn't taste like despair and floor sweepings. It tastes like hope with a hint of scorched tin. After breakfast, you step outside. The sun's just rising, casting long golden rays across the dirt road. Dust hangs gently in the air, kicked up by 2 kids chasing each other with sticks and one pig who seems to be winning. Your mule is still at the hitching post, dozing peacefully. He looks better rested than you. You're not bitter, not really. You're about to untie him when someone shouts, "Hey, you there?" You turn. It's the town's sheriff. You know this by his badge, his squint, and the fact that he walks like someone who's had this conversation many times and always ends it the same way, by being right. You new in town. You nod. You armed. You hesitate. You pat yourself down. You do have a revolver. It's rusted, barely works, and you're pretty sure you loaded it backward once. The sheriff raises a brow. You planning on using that? Only if someone's shooting first, you reply. He stares at you a moment longer, then grunts. Good. 'Cause there's trouble brewing, and I don't need greenhorns stirring it up worse. You try to slip away politely, but trouble finds you. Because not 10 minutes later, someone gallops into town yelling, "They hit the stagecoach, took everything." You freeze mid-saddle. Bandits. Actual ones. The sheriff curses and starts barking orders. 3 men mount horses. A teenager volunteers and is immediately told to go home before you cry on your boots. You try to look invisible. But then someone shouts, "We're short a man." The sheriff turns. You, he says. You point at yourself. Me. He nods. You got a gun, you can ride, that's enough. You want to object, to say something like, "I'm just here for beans and mild survival." But you're swept up. Literally, someone throws you a bandolier. It doesn't fit. The bullets fall out. You collect them awkwardly. And then you're galloping, badly. You bounce in the saddle like a bag of laundry. The others move with purpose. You move like you're in a rodeo designed by pranksters. Still, you stay on your mule, barely. The sheriff leads the posse westward, following the bandits' trail. Hoofprints, discarded sacks, a glove that may have belonged to a woman or a very stylish outlaw. Your heart pounds, your hands shake. What will you do if there's a shootout? Your revolver has 2 bullets and a trigger that sticks. You once missed a tree at 5 paces. You are not built for this. After an hour, the trail leads into a ravine. The sheriff holds up a hand. Everyone halts. "We go on foot," he says. You dismount. Your legs ache. Your courage flickers like a candle in a storm. You creep forward. Then a shout, gunfire. You hit the dirt. The sheriff returns fire. The others spread out. You scramble behind a rock, breathing fast, trying to remember which way the revolver's cylinder turns. You peek out and see 2 men with bandanas ducking behind an overturned cart. One of them fires. A bullet ricochets near your boot. You fire back wildly. The recoil nearly flips you. You miss, obviously. But they don't know that. One of them ducks lower. You reload. Slowly, your hands sweat. Suddenly, the sheriff flanks them, shouting. One bandit bolts. The other surrenders. Just like that, it's over. You sit there, stunned. Your heart beats louder than the gunfire ever did. The sheriff walks past you, nodding once. You didn't wet yourself. That's better than some. High praise. You ride back to town in silence, your ears still ringing. The prisoner is locked in the tiny jail, really just a wooden room with bars and a chair. You're offered a drink at the saloon. You decline. You sit on the porch instead, watching the sun sink low and the dust settle. You didn't die. You didn't win, exactly. But you're alive. That counts. Later, Skeeter appears. You shot at someone today, he says, impressed. You nod. Missed, didn't you? You nod again. He hands you a biscuit. Still, ain't nothing like that first time. You eat the biscuit. It tastes like sawdust and adrenaline. You survived your first outlaw encounter. Barely. You sleep uneasily, with your revolver under your pillow and your dreams packed full of gunshots that never seem to hit anything. At one point, you wake to your own snoring, convinced it's a bandit sneaking into your room. It's not. It's just your mule outside, making what can only be described as a noise of profound digestion. Morning comes heavy. Your shoulders ache from yesterday's ride, and your hands still trembling from that moment behind the rock, clutching your pistol like it was going to grant you wisdom. You still missed, but you didn't die. That's something. Downstairs, there's no breakfast this time. The boarding house has a sign up, closed until supplies arrive. You try not to take it personally. Instead, you wander outside into the rising heat, squinting under your hat, the one you stole from the river, remember. Dustwell is waking up slow. A kid draws in the dirt with a stick. A shopkeeper opens his shutters and sneezes. You get the distinct feeling that time moves slower here, like syrup sliding off a tilted biscuit. You turn a corner and almost walk right into a sign. Doc Turner, surgery, TONICS, advice, no refunds. And that's when it hits you. Your ankle. Still swollen, still sore. You can barely rotate it without making a noise usually reserved for horror movies. You push open the doctor's door. It creaks ominously. Inside, there are shelves lined with glass bottles, jars of what might be preserved organs, and a strong smell of whiskey, herbs, and despair. There's a cot in the corner, stained, sagging, and not reassuring. A man with thick spectacles and a mustache like a paintbrush turns to you. You injured or dramatic? He asks. You blink. My ankle's swollen from prairie trauma. He nods. Very scientific. Take a seat. You lower yourself onto a stool. He crouches, lifts your pant leg, and pokes your ankle with a metal rod. You yelp. He grunts. Swollen, not broken. I can give you something for the pain. You nod eagerly. He hands you a bottle labeled Dr. Turner's Soothing Tonic, now with 5% less arsenic. You hesitate. How much arsenic is acceptable? Depends on how bad the pain is. You sip it. It burns. It tastes like licorice, battery acid, and regret. But 5 minutes later, you can't feel your ankle or most of your toes. He wraps your leg in rough cotton, gives you a peppermint, and sends you off with a bill scrawled in pencil on bark. Pay when you can, he says, or never. Everyone forgets. You stumble out, floaty, and sit on the porch steps of the general store. A woman walks by with a chicken under her arm. She tips her hat. You wave. The chicken glares. The town has a rhythm, calm punctuated by chaos. You've already seen both. Still, you wonder, how does anyone survive long out here? You don't have to wait long for another lesson. Because just after noon, a man gallops into town with blood on his shirt and panic in his eyes. My wife, she's hurt, wagon flipped. The sheriff grabs his hat. Where? 10 miles east, near the dry gulch. The doc rushes to pack a bag. You're there. You have a mule and a vague sense of moral obligation. So you go. You and the doc ride out in the searing sun, jostling over rocks and under low branches. He doesn't talk much, just mutters occasionally about splints and clean gauze, and let's hope it's not the femur. After an hour, you find the wagon. It's upside down, one wheel gone, scattered belongings strewn across the sand like sad confetti. A woman lies nearby, conscious, clutching her leg. You help lift the wagon enough for the doc to drag out his tools. And then you see it. His doctor's bag is medieval. A saw, a bottle of whiskey, a spool of twine, something that might be tongs or salad servers, it's unclear. Hold her down, he says. You blink. Wait, what? Just in case, he adds cheerily. He pulls up her dress to expose the injury. A snapped shin, already purple and swelling. Can't set it clean, he mutters. We brace, pour whiskey, and hope she'll live. Might curse me forever, but she'll live. He wraps the leg tight while she screams into her husband's shirt. You hold her hand and try not to cry for her. When it's done, the doc is soaked in sweat, the husband's in shock, and the woman is already unconscious from the pain and or the whiskey. You help load her onto a makeshift stretcher and begin the slow trip back. The doc turns to you and says, "You ever think being a banker sounds better than this?" You nod. I think anything sounds better than this. He laughs. Well, wait till you see childbirth. You ride in silence for the rest of the way. By the time you reach town, it's nearly dusk. The sheriff meets you halfway. How bad? She'll live, the doc says, assuming no fever. No fever, right. You sit on the steps outside the doc's office as he tends to his patient. The sheriff brings you a flask. You take a sip. It doesn't help, but you pretend it does. Used to be, he says. Folks thought doctors were sorcerers. Now they just think we're lucky if we don't kill M. You look down at your own bandaged ankle. Feels accurate. He tips his hat and leaves. You sit there as the sky darkens, thinking about everything that could kill a person out here. The obvious stuff, snakes, bullets, falling wagons, but also the quiet stuff, infected cuts, water that's just a little too still, winters that come too fast. Historians still argue whether the survival rate was higher for people with grit or people with luck. You hope you have at least a little of both. You hobble back to your room, collapse on the bed. Your hands still smell faintly of blood and horse. You stare at the ceiling, listening to a coyote howl in the distance. And you realize it's only been a few days. Just a few. And already, the West has tried to kill you more times than you can count. You close your eyes. You survived the doctor. You survived the day. Barely. You wake up sweating. Not from a nightmare, though your dreams did involve Skeeter juggling scorpions, but from the heat. It's barely dawn, yet the room is already stifling. The small window is open, but the air outside feels like it's been personally toasted by the sun. You peel yourself off the sheets, your shirt clinging like wet paper. Every movement is a reminder. You're not built for this. Not this heat, not this lifestyle, not this era. Downstairs, the boarding house has finally reopened its kitchen. You eat eggs, rubbery, undersalted, and toast that's just a piece of bread slightly warmed by proximity to fire. You thank the cook anyway. Gratitude is currency here. Today, you're heading out again. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Your mule needs water. So do you. And the only place left to check is south, toward the old trail that, according to rumor, cuts through cattle country and eventually leads to a spring. Watch for storms, the sheriff warns as you pass. They come fast this time of year. You look at the cloudless sky. Storms. You nod anyway. The first hour is bearable. The sun is only mildly angry. The wind is low. You follow a narrow path through yellowing grass and a few patches of scrub that crackle underfoot. You see vultures. Not flying, perched, watching. They're unsettling in their calm. As if they've seen this story play out before, as if they know how it ends. Your mule plods along, steady but slow. He has entered what you can only describe as power-saving mode. Then you smell it. Not something you expected. Smoke. You pause, sniff again. Definitely smoke, faint but rising. You ride up a low ridge and see it, a thin black column curling skyward in the distance. Your first instinct is campfire, but then it spreads. Fast. The wind kicks up, and now you feel it on your skin, heat from something not the sun. Prairie fire. You spin the mule around. He does not like this. He balks. You dig in your heels, shouting, coaxing, begging. The fire crackles louder, a low roar now. The dry grass is catching like tinder dipped in kerosene. You remember something someone said back in Dustwell. Wet a blanket, cover yourself, run if you can't ride. You fumble for your canteen, pour the last of the water onto your blanket. It's barely enough to dampen it, but you throw it over your shoulders and slap the mule with your hat. He bolts. The trail blurs, dust stings your eyes, ash rains like gray snow. You duck low, urging him forward. Smoke fills your lungs. You cough, gag, spit. The world becomes noise. Wind, fire, hooves, your own heartbeat thudding in your ears. Then suddenly, you're through. You don't remember the moment it ends, only that the air shifts, that the smoke thins, that the mule slows from a gallop to a trot, then a walk, then a shaky stop. You dismount, wheezing. Turn around. The ridge behind you glows orange. The fire's still moving, but slower now, curling around boulders, licking at distant brush. You fall to your knees. You don't cry, but you could. Instead, you crawl to a patch of shady dirt, sit down and just breathe. The air still smells like burning, but it's breathable now, just smoky, not apocalyptic. After a long while, you check your mule. He's panting but fine. His tail's a little singed. He doesn't seem to care. You find a stream. A real one this time. Clean, cold, meandering through a shallow dip in the land. You dunk your face in, drink deeply. Let it pour over your neck and wrists. You strip off your shirt and rinse it, hang it over a bush. You even wash your socks. You lie back on a warm rock and stare up at the sky. It's blue again. It's mocking blue. You think about how quickly everything changed. 1 minute, a trail. Next minute, chaos. Historians still argue whether prairie fires were the deadliest force in the frontier or just the most unpredictable. You're leaning toward both. After you dry off and dress, you follow the stream to a small clearing with a half-burned fence and 3 cows standing dumbly beside it. You blink. They blink back. One moos. You have found cows. You tie your mule loosely and approach the fence. It's blackened in parts, still smoldering. There's a farmhouse nearby, leaning, missing shingles but intact. You knock. No answer. Inside, it's abandoned. A half-eaten meal sits on the table, moldy. A child's doll lies face down on the floor. They left in a hurry. You rummage through the cabinets, find a tin of peaches and a jar of something labeled hog grease. You take the peaches, leave the hog grease. You step back outside. The cows are still there, judging. You don't know how to herd cows. You try clapping, yelling, they stare. You wave your arms and yell, H-Y-A-H. One licks its nose. Eventually, you give up and just lead your mule away. The cows can figure out their own destiny. As the sun lowers, you find a tree with wide branches and soft grass beneath. You make camp. Eat the peaches. They are magnificent. Sweet, cold, a miracle in syrup. You lie back and sigh. You almost died today. To fire, to panic, to a mule's indecision. You almost didn't taste this. But you did. You close your eyes. The wind has picked up again, but it's cool this time. Fresh, clean, it brushes over you like a lullaby. You drift off to sleep, the smell of smoke still faint on your clothes. You survive the fire. Barely. You wake slowly, cocooned in that rare and dangerous illusion. Comfort. For a moment, everything feels soft. The breeze is gentle, the grass beneath you surprisingly pillowy, and your mule, miraculously, is not standing on your blanket or chewing your boot. Then it all unravels. You stretch. Your joints crack like a poker table at high noon. Your mouth tastes like you spent the night gnawing on dry rope. And your neck, well, sleeping against a tree root was a bold move. You look over and see your mule asleep with one eye open, or possibly just giving up on blinking. The fire is long gone, and the prairie is quiet again. Too quiet. The only sounds are buzzing flies and the occasional indignant crow complaining about something invisible. Today's mission is simple. Check for messages. Not emails, not texts, not even faxes for those of you still pretending it's 1994. No, here in the Wild West, if you want to talk to someone, you write a letter, hire a stagecoach, wait for a courier. Or, if you're feeling fancy, telegraph it in broken phrases and hope the operator in the next town isn't napping. You sling your saddlebag over one shoulder and begin the ride toward the nearest mail station. It's said to be a half-day south, at a place called Wasp S. Elbow, a name that inspires zero confidence. Along the way, you pass through the dried husk of what was once a promising homestead. Fences collapse in tired zigzags, a windmill squeaks like it's weeping, and a rusted mailbox hangs open, cobwebbed and empty. You poke around. A few burned letters, a child's shoe, and a portrait on tin of a man, a woman, and their baby, smiling as if unaware that this place would one day be remembered only by crows. Historians still argue whether the psychological toll of isolation contributed more to frontier failures than environmental hardship. Looking around, you'd believe it. You press on. Eventually, you crest a hill and see it. A squat stone building beside a thin trail of telegraph wire. A crooked sign reads post and telly, Wasp's Elbow. You dismount. Your mule tries to follow you inside. You gently shove his nose back out. Inside, it's dim, dusty, and blessedly cool. Behind the counter is a man, so thin he looks like a pipe cleaner in suspenders. He peers over his spectacles at you like you're an overdue package. Name, he rasps. You give it. He opens a drawer, shuffles through letters. Nothing, he says. You try not to deflate. Any telegrams? He shuffles again. Got one came through 4 days ago, might be for you. He squints at a crumpled slip. From a cousin Eli. That's you, or at least your alias, probably. He reads it out loud, monotone. ARRIVED, Kansas. Lost 1 boot. Stop. Saw buffalo. Smelled worse. Stop. Will write if alive. Stop. You smile faintly. Eli's alive, mostly. 1 boot down, but spirits up. You ask to send a reply. He nods and hands you a pencil with no eraser and a sheet of paper already stained with what looks like gravy. You scribble a message. Still writing, lost dignity, found fire, stop, miss soap, stop, tell M.A. I'm fine, lie if necessary, stop. The man transcribes it, taps it into the machine with surprising speed, then goes back to napping upright. You step back outside. There's nothing waiting for you. No packages, no updates, no word from home that they're proud, worried, or wondering if you're now married to a cactus. You feel it now, the quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. You sit on the porch railing and stare out across the flat land, watching heat waves ripple like invisible ghosts. You wonder how settlers handled the loneliness. When the nearest town was a 2-day ride, and you only spoke to someone who wasn't your mule once a month, if that. Maybe that's why people talked to their animals, or to their shadows, or to inanimate objects like fences or spoons. You're not there yet. But you do find yourself speaking out loud when your mule farts. Nice, you mutter, real poetic. He flicks his tail in appreciation. Back on the trail, you decide to visit a nearby trading post, a place you heard might have goods, news, and maybe a place to sit that doesn't splinter. The ride is hot. The sun overhead is not your friend. Your bandana is soaked in sweat, and your shirt is beginning to salt crust again. You smell like a jerky factory that went bankrupt in July. When you finally arrive, the trading post is barely standing, more of a trading lean. Inside is a man named Dwight. He wears a vest, no shirt, and speaks in riddles. Or possibly he's just missing several teeth. You ask if he has letters. And nope. Food. It depends. On what? What you consider food. He gestures toward a jar of pickled something. You buy hardtack instead, because at least you know where that misery begins and ends. There's a small chalkboard nailed to the wall with town news. It reads, "Calf born with 3 legs, still runs. A Dustwell woman claims she saw a ghost. Turns out it was her husband. A stagecoach 2 weeks late, might be early." You appreciate the optimism. You buy a pencil stub and 2 sheets of paper. You sit on the floor and write a letter. It's slow, awkward. You can't quite remember your own address. You just write, "Dear whoever reads this, I haven't died yet. Had beans with a man named Skeeter. Got chased by fire. Miss Real shoes. Hope you're well." yours in dust and discomfort. The saddest cowboy alive. You hand it to Dwight. He grunts, shoves it into a box marked outbound. Will it make it? You doubt it. Still, you rode it. That night, you make camp under a creaky windmill. The sound is rhythmic, comforting. You eat the last of your stale bread, sip warm water, and stare up at the stars. There are no messages for you. No one's waiting back east with news or money, or even a decent coat. But you're still here. Still riding. Still breathing. You survived another lonely day. Barely. You wake up coughing. Not the dry, polite kind of cough you fake to clear your throat during awkward silences. No, this is the kind of coughing that pulls at your ribs and leaves your tongue tasting like chimney soot. You sit up fast, instinctively reaching for your canteen, and then you see it. Smoke. Thick, heavy, rolling across the prairie like a wool blanket soaked in fear. You scramble to your feet, heart pounding. At first, you think maybe it's just someone's campfire gone rogue. Again, you've seen that story before, but this smoke is darker, wider, and moving fast. You spin in a circle, eyes scanning for the source. And then you hear it. A low roar like distant thunder, only it's not rain coming, it's fire. Prairie fire, again. You knew this land had its dangers. Rattlesnakes, bandits, undercooked beans. But no one prepared you for the frequency of spontaneous combustion. You grab your gear with shaking hands, throw your saddle onto your mule, who's already snorting and turning in circles. He knows what's coming. He knows more than you. Okay, you mutter, looping the cinch with fumbling fingers. We're not doing this again. We're not. You slap a dampened cloth across your face, sling your bag across your shoulder, and climb onto the saddle. Your thighs protest. Your knees scream. Your mule bolts before you're fully ready. No matter. You ride. The world becomes wind, smoke, and sheer panic. The fire is moving from the west. You cut east, aiming for a rocky ridge you vaguely remember from yesterday. Your mule charges forward like he's had enough of this nonsense and wants to retire on a mountain. You're with him. You reach the ridge, just barely ahead of the flames. From the top, you look back. The fire has swallowed everything. Grass, fence posts, a shack you didn't even notice before, now burning like a funeral pyre for forgotten dreams. You watch helplessly as a cow, yes, a cow sprints out of the smoke, mooing with what can only be described as righteous fury. Then comes the terrifying part. The wind shifts. Now the fire, curling around the ridge, coming up the other side. You're surrounded. You panic. You yell. You dismount and look for cover, but there's nothing but a pile of rocks and a shallow gully. And then you remember something from a half-listened-to campfire story. Set a backburn. You hesitate. You have matches, you have dry grass, and nothing to lose. You strike a match, toss it ahead of the fire line. Watch it sputter, catch, spread. The flames leap upward, but now you're making a safe patch, a scorched island amid the chaos. It's desperate, it's foolish. It works. Barely. The main fire reaches your burn zone and fizzles. Smoke engulfs you, but there's no fuel left to feed the beast. You drop to your knees, coughing. You're dizzy, trembling, your skin hot from proximity alone. But you're alive. You stumble toward your mule, who's chewing something and staring at you like you're the maniac. He's not wrong. Later that afternoon, after the smoke clears and the wind dies down, you walk through the aftermath. A charred ground, blackened trees, the remains of a fence that used to point toward someone's homestead. You find a pot, melted nearly flat, a burned pair of boots, a half-cracked mirror. You look into it. Your face is streaked with ash. Your hair is wild. Your eyes are bloodshot. You look like you belong here now. But it doesn't feel like belonging. It feels like survival fatigue. You find a patch of unburned ground, set up camp, and sit down hard. You're shaking. Adrenaline's worn off, and now you're just tired. And then, of course, it starts to rain. Because why not? Just enough to turn the ash into a gritty sludge. Just enough to soak your shirt. Not enough to feel like a blessing. You lean back against a boulder and let it happen. It's not freezing, at least. You think about the fire, about how fast it moved, about how the only reason you're still breathing is a half-baked idea sparked by a memory you didn't know you had. Historians still argue whether settlers had fire protocols or just a lot of dumb luck. You're adding weight to the dumb luck theory. As the rain tapers off, you feel the first hints of exhaustion settling into your bones. You pull out a chunk of stale cornbread. It's soggy now. You eat it anyway. Then hoofbeats. You go tense. A rider approaches through the haze. Wide-brimmed hat, rifle across his back. You squint. It's not the sheriff. It's not Skeeter. It's someone new. He stops 10 feet from you, squints through the smoke. Fire got you too. You nod, almost. He scans the area. Heard it was lightning, might have been carelessness, hard to say. You don't answer. You're too tired. He dismounts, offers you a flask. You sip. It's bitter and tastes faintly of mint and dirt. Name S. Boone, he says. Don't care, you reply. He laughs. You got somewhere to be, he asks. You shake your head. Then you'll ride with me tomorrow. Caravan heading south. Supplies, maybe even stew. You nod slowly. He sits nearby, pulls a harmonica from his pocket, and plays a slow, wandering tune that sounds like wind and memory. You fall asleep to it. Soot in your lungs, rain in your hair. But alive. You survived the fire. And this time, it wasn't just barely. It was because of you. You wake up to a mouthful of dirt and harmonica. Boone's still playing, softly now, like he's serenading the prairie, or maybe just trying to keep the silence from creeping in too deep. Your mule is nearby, lying down, which is either a sign of profound exhaustion or mild depression. Hard to tell. You sit up, wipe the mud from your face, and wince. Everything hurts. Your ankle, your back, your ego. But you're alive, and Boone hands you a piece of jerky without a word. It's tough, like chewing on a fence post. But after the day you had yesterday, it's basically fine dining. Boone nods toward the horizon. Caravan's not far. We'll ride slow. You mount up and follow. The trail south starts easy, flat, dry, the fire-scorched earth giving way to wild scrub again. You pass a few burned trees, still smoking. A rabbit darts out and startles your mule, who responds by trying to pirouette. You barely stay in the saddle. By mid-morning, you see the caravan, 4 wagons, 6 oxen, a dozen people. All of them look tired. One of them is yelling at a barrel. You arrive, just in time for the breakdown. Literally. One wagon's wheel has snapped, the axle bent. A man named Elmer is trying to fix it by swearing at it. A woman is boiling water on a campfire that threatens to go out every time someone breathes near it. 2 kids are playing a game called Throw the Scorpion. You tie your mule and approach the mess. Boone introduces you. Traveler, just lived through fire, can maybe lift heavy things. You can't, but you nod anyway. Elmer hands you a block of wood. Wedge this. You don't know what you're wedging. You just do it. The wheel eventually goes back on, sort of. It leans like it's got somewhere else to be. But it rolls, and that's enough for everyone to cheer. The caravan begins moving again. And now, you're one of them. You walk for part of the day beside Boone, who doesn't talk unless necessary. You learn he used to be a preacher, then a soldier, then a drifter. Now he just hauls things people don't want to carry themselves. Sometimes that includes bad news. You ever deliver a letter someone doesn't want to read? He asks. You nod. Only once. Those stick with you. You don't ask about his. The terrain changes as you go. Low hills, wildflowers that somehow survived the fire, and fences that look too straight to be abandoned. You ask where you are. Homestead country, Boone says, and where dreams go to die. He's not wrong. You pass 3 collapsed shacks before lunch. One has a chimney still standing. Another has a rocking chair half buried in sand. The third has a sign that reads, "Bless this mess." You don't know whether to laugh or cry. Then comes the surprise. You crest a hill and see it, an intact homestead. A real one. With smoke curling from a chimney, animals in pens, laundry drying on a line. Actual human life. You all slow down. A man walks out to greet you. He's sunburned, lean, and holding a shotgun, but not aiming it, just carrying it like a warning. Boone speaks with him quietly, hands him something. The man nods, waves you in. It turns out he's a friend of Boone's, or maybe someone Boone once didn't shoot. Either way, you're invited to stay the night. You help unload the wagons while kids run underfoot and chickens cluck like they own the place. The air smells like baked cornbread and manure. It's weirdly comforting. That night, you eat a meal that wasn't cooked over a stick or scraped from a tin. There's stew, actual stew, with potatoes and onions. You nearly cry into your bowl. Afterward, you sit on the porch, full and warm. The stars are out again, bright, uncaring, magnificent. Someone passes a jug of something homemade and fermented. You take a sip. It tastes like paint thinner and apples. Boone points at the sky. Used to be I knew every constellation. Now I just know the ones that don't move. You look up and try to find Orion. You think he's there, but it might just be smoke in your eyes. One of the homesteaders, a woman with a braid so tight it could cut rope, asks how long you've been out here. You say, "Too long." She nods, and not long enough. Then she tells you her story. A husband lost to fever, a year of failed crops, a cow that broke its leg and then somehow broke another leg. Still wouldn't die, she says. We named it Curse. You laugh. Then she looks you dead in the eye. Out here, everything breaks. You just get better at patching it. Historians still argue whether homesteaders survived because of their resilience or because they simply didn't know when to quit. Maybe both. That night, you sleep in a real bed again. No wind, no scorpions, no fire on the horizon. You wake once to the sound of owls, or maybe Boone's snoring. Hard to tell. Morning comes. You're given a slice of bread with real butter on it. You take 2 hours to say goodbye. Not because of politeness. Because you don't want to leave. But you do. Back on the trail with Boone and the wagons heading farther south. Your mule is in a better mood. Maybe it's the butter. Maybe he liked the chickens. You ride quietly, grateful. Because for once, you weren't just surviving. You were, however briefly, living. The road south rolls out before you like a dusty promise you can't quite trust. You've got full stomachs behind you, sore muscles beneath you, and the low, slow creak of wagon wheels in your ears. The caravan plods forward at mule pace, which is to say, whatever pace the mules feel like today. You, Boone, and the rest of the caravan pass through open fields, studded with prickly shrubs, wagon ruts, and the occasional startled jackrabbit sprinting like it's late for a very intense meeting. Then come the cattle. It starts with a smell, faint, sour, undeniably bovine. Next comes the sound, mooing, low and persistent, a symphony of bovine dissatisfaction. And then you see them. Hundreds of them. You crest a rise and there they are, stretching across the plains like a slow-moving sea of legs and horns and flies. You see 3 cowboys circling them lazily on horseback. Like wranglers at a parade, they no longer want to attend. You slow down. One of the cowboys notices you and rides over. He's young, sunburnt, chewing a stalk of something, and smells like leather, salt, and cow breath. "Drive's heading north," he says. "Y'all crossing through." Boone nods. "We won't bother your herd." The cowboy shrugs. "Don't matter, they'll bother you." And he's right. Because the next 2 hours are a mix of dodging cows, yelling at cows, being mooed at by cows, and watching one cow attempt to chew your mule's tail. There's a moment, brief but eternal, when you're trapped in the middle of the herd. Horns in front, horns behind. You freeze. You don't breathe. One cow stares at you, dead-eyed and contemplative, like she's trying to decide if you're a threat or just furniture. You nod respectfully. She blinks, then licks your boot. Congratulations, you've been blessed. Eventually, you emerge from the herd, smelling like a cow's armpit and covered in dust that doesn't belong to you. Your mule looks horrified. You feel the same. You break for water by a low creek, where the oxen from the wagons drink noisily. The 2 kids who had been throwing scorpions yesterday now try to ride one of the cows. The cow seems fine with it. You wonder if that means the apocalypse is near. Boone sits beside you, tossing pebbles into the creek. "You ever work a cattle drive?" he asks. You shake your head. "I thought it was more glamorous." He snorts. "Only in dime novels. In reality, it's dust, dung, and delirium." He's not wrong. You notice one of the cowboys, older, grizzled, with a long mustache that looks like it could store secrets, trying to mend a saddle with a piece of twine and a nail. You wander over and offer help. He glances up. You know leather. "No," you admit. He hands you the twine anyway. And together, you sort of fix it. It's ugly, but it holds. You call that a win. He lights a roll-your-own cigarette and says, "Used to be, we could ride 3 days and not see another soul. Now, seems like every creek's got a drifter or a dreamer or a corpse." You nod. "Which one am I?" He studies you. You're still deciding. The cattle move on, so do you. As evening approaches, the caravan halts near a grove of scraggly trees. Camp is made. Fires are built. Someone pulls out a banjo, not to play it well, just to pluck it like they're arguing with it. Dinner is beans. Again. You eat without complaint. Beans are calories. Beans are life. Across the fire, Boone is sharpening a knife. Nearby, Elmer is trying to make biscuits out of flour and desperation. The kids have made a crown of weeds and declared their mule king of dirt. It's peaceful. And then comes the fight. It starts as a drunken argument over who stole the last decent blanket. It escalates when one man throws a pan and another draws a knife. You're halfway through chewing a bean when someone shouts, "Get the sheriff!" Which is awkward, because there isn't one. So Boone stands up. He walks calmly into the chaos, says one sentence, quiet, low, final. I don't care who started it, but if this fire gets kicked over, I'm throwing both of you in the creek. They freeze. One man drops his knife. The other mutters something about respect and sits down hard. Crisis adjourned. You blink. Boone returns to his log and keeps sharpening. You chew slower. Later that night, under a sky full of hard stars, Boone finally speaks again. You learn a lot out here. Like what, you ask? He picks at a hangnail. Like how loud silence is, how dumb cows are, how a man's only useful if he knows when to shut up and when to step in. You nod. You stare at the fire until it flickers low. Your blanket smells like beans and smoke and regret. You lie back on your saddle and try not to think about cows, or bandits, or biscuits that shatter teeth. You try to think about tomorrow. But tomorrow is just another word for survival. You fall asleep to the sound of the banjo, losing another argument. You survived the cattle drive. And even if the cows won this round, at least they didn't kill you. Barely. You wake up staring into the blank expression of a cow. It's standing over you, breathing heavily, its hot breath smelling like hay and decisions it never had to make. You blink. The cow blinks. There is a moment of mutual understanding. You both hate mornings. You slowly sit up, brushing dirt and what might be a hoof print off your coat. The cow plods away, unimpressed. Today, you've left the caravan. Boone's heading west with a shipment of nails and boots. You, however, are drawn by a phrase someone mumbled last night. There's gold in that river. Ah, yes, the gold rush. You've heard stories. Everyone has. Someone finds a glittering nugget the size of a chicken egg, sells it, buys land, becomes mayor, dies surrounded by carpets and gaslights. You want the first part of that, maybe not the carpet. The mining camp is 2 valleys over. Takes half the day to reach it. Your mule is less enthusiastic than usual, possibly because he can sense the ridiculousness of this endeavor. You bribe him with a half-rotten apple, and he agrees to move. Slowly, with a sigh. You arrive by late afternoon. The camp is more like a shanty town built by over-caffeinated raccoons. Tents made of canvas, leather, and one made entirely of what appears to be tattered curtains. Smoke rises from several campfires. Someone's hammering something angrily. A sign hangs on a broken post. Fort Sorrow, est 3 weeks ago. Gold rumored. Rats confirmed. You lead your mule to a post and tie him beside another mule who has one eye and an attitude. A man approaches you, shirtless, bearded, wet. You here for the dream? He asks. You shrug. I'm here for the gold. He laughs. Same thing. He hands you a pan, just hands it to you. No introduction, no explanation. River, that way. Don't drink it. Try not to step in the spots with bones. Charming. You walk to the river. It's wide, shallow, and lined with desperate-looking people. Some are knee-deep in muck. Others are shouting. A few just stare blankly into their pans, like diviners trying to read fate in the glint of minerals. You find a spot, kneel down, and dip the pan. Swirl. Pour. Nothing. Try again. Swirl. Pour. A shiny flake. You hold your breath, squint, tap it. It vanishes. Probably mica, fool's gold. You keep at it. Hours pass. Your legs cramp, your back aches, your hands are numb. You find 3 more flakes mica. A rusty nail. A tooth, hopefully animal. 1 small gold speck. A speck. You scream silently. Around you, the mood is similar. 1 man sobs into his pan. Another is dancing with joy because he found a chunk the size of my thumbnail, which, upon closer inspection, turns out to be an old button. Historians still argue whether the gold rush was more successful economically or emotionally devastating. You've been here half a day and are ready to punch a trout. You stumble back to the campfire pit. Someone's cooking beans. Someone else is muttering about taxes. You sit. You stare into your pan like it personally betrayed you. A Skeeter appears. Of course he does. Wearing a shirt made from stitched-together flour sacks and holding a gold nugget the size of a walnut. Found this by accident, he says. Was digging a latrine. You nod, because there is nothing else to do. Later, you buy stew with the 1 tiny fleck you found. The cook looks at you like you've insulted his horse. Don't bite the gold, he says. I'll bite you. The stew is watery. The bread is hard. The air smells of sweat, dirt, and crushed hopes. That night, you sleep under a tarp that used to be a wagon cover. You dream of gold nuggets that scream when you touch them. The next morning, you go back. You try again. And again. You find the bottle cap, some marble, a dead fish with 1 eye, 3 coins, all washers, but no more gold. The guy next to you mutters, "This river's picked clean. All that's left is backache and lies." You believe him. You trade your pan for a slab of salted pork and leave. On your way out, someone yells, "They found a real vein down by the bend." You don't turn around. You've seen the look in their eyes, the hollow hunger, the twitch of madness that creeps in when you swirl a pan for 12 hours and convince yourself that glitter is salvation. You ride out, the dream behind you. But you keep the 1 tiny speck, just in case. You survive the gold rush. Barely. You ride away from the mining camp with dust in your mouth, and a tiny pouch holding one glittering speck of maybe. You don't look back. The air behind you is thick with dreams and smoke, and the kind of desperation that clings to your skin like river silt. Your mule seems relieved. He quickens his pace, possibly out of self-preservation. After hours of travel through scrubland, you come upon a fork in the road. One sign reads, New Hope 8 miles. The other, Dry Hollow 4 miles. You think about it. New Hope sounds optimistic, but 8 miles in this heat. Ambitious. Dry Hollow, on the other hand, is probably exactly what it says. Empty, dusty, and full of disappointment. You head for Dry Hollow. Naturally. The town is more of a suggestion than a settlement. 3 buildings, a well, a windmill barely creaking in the breeze. You see a stable, a saloon, and, miraculously, a jail. You blink at it. There are bars, a faded sign that says justice, and a man asleep in a rocking chair with a shotgun across his lap. His badge dangles from his vest, worn thin like it's been through arguments and thunderstorms. This is the sheriff. You tether your mule, walk up and clear your throat. He snorts awake and eyes you. You a problem? Not today. He squints harder. You sure? You look like you've seen fire, flood, and foolishness. Accurate, you say. He waves you toward the saloon. Go get a drink. If someone shoots, come find me. The saloon is empty. 1 table, 1 bartender, 1 piano untouched. You order a water. The bartender raises an eyebrow but obliges. You sip. It's lukewarm, has a faint metallic tang, but it's clean. You new here? He asks. Just passing through. You better. This town eats folks that try to stay. Charming. You learn the town's name was once more hopeful, Silver Hollow. But after the mines dried up and the water turned brackish, it was rebranded by the locals to something more realistic. There's no law here, not really. The sheriff's job, you find out, is mostly ceremonial, like a scarecrow with a badge. The townsfolk handle problems themselves. You ask about the last crime committed here. The bartender scratches his beard. Man stole a horse. Town held a vote, hanged him the next day. You blink. Was the vote unanimous? 1 guy abstained. He didn't like crowds. You step outside and see a post on the far end of the town square. It's tall, scarred. There's still a bit of rope on it. This is not justice. This is ritual. You've stumbled into the Wild West's darker myth, mob law. Historians still argue whether these towns truly believed in justice or just vengeance dressed in a vest. You explore anyway. At the general store, a windowless shack with a sign that says stuff. You find rope, bullets, and molasses, all overpriced. You buy a biscuit and regret it instantly. It cracks your molar. You suspect it was baked sometime during the Mexican-American War. As the sun begins to set, A commotion brews near the stables. Voices raised, a scuffle. You wander closer and spot a young man, barely 20, surrounded by angry townsfolk. He's being accused of horse theft. You freeze. The sheriff arrives, shotgun in hand, but doesn't speak. The crowd starts shouting. A woman says she saw him sneaking near the corral. A man says his saddle's missing. The accused insists he's innocent. He's pale, shaking. No one listens. You look around. There is no trial, no evidence, just volume. Someone mentions the rope. Your stomach drops. You glance at the sheriff. He doesn't move. You step forward against better judgment. What's the proof? They glare at you. Someone mutters, "Outsider." You repeat the question. What did he steal? When? Who saw it? They fumble. Turns out no one saw anything, just shadows and assumptions. You speak slowly, calmly. This isn't justice. This is fear. They grumble, but they listen. Eventually, someone admits the horse was tied to the wrong post. Not stolen, just misplaced by them. The boy is released. He sprints out of town, so fast he forgets his shoes. The sheriff watches it all from his rocking chair, then tips his hat at you. Brave. You shake your head. Necessary. He nods. Won't last. You spend the night in the saloon. The bartender lets you sleep in a corner booth. You rest with one eye open. Because here, guilt is optional. Punishment is not. In the morning, you leave. The town watches. You ride hard until it's out of sight. Out of reach. You survived frontier law. Barely. You ride with the wind in your face and the stench of dry hollow still clinging to your clothes. It doesn't wash off. Some places stain deeper than dust or blood or ash. The prairie opens up in front of you again, endless, rippling gold under a sky so wide it makes you feel microscopic. You pass cacti taller than men, and distant buttes rising like broken teeth from the earth. It's beautiful. It's empty. It's the West. But it's not the fantasy. Not anymore. You're down to your last biscuit and your last thread of patience. Your mule is walking slower now, his hooves dragging, his eyes distant. You reach down and pat his neck. Just a little farther, you murmur. We'll find something. You lie. Because you don't know anymore. By midday, the wind picks up, dry, fast, and mean. It whips the dust into your eyes, makes your lips crack and your tongue swell. You try to drink, but your canteen is empty. Of course it is. Everything is. You think about turning back. Then you see the cabin. At first, it's just a shadow. Then it grows real boards, a porch, a collapsed roof on one side. It's alone on the land like it fell from the sky and stuck. You ride toward it, too tired to be cautious. The door creaks open when you knock. Inside, it smells like mildew and memory. The table is broken, but there's a chair, a shelf of dusty cans, and a pile of quilts that might have once been a bed. You find a cracked cup, fill it with a few drops from a leaking roof beam, and drink like it's wine. You don't know who lived here, but you can guess how they left. There's no sign of struggle, just stillness, a sense of someone deciding this was enough. You sit on the porch staring at the horizon. The wind has stopped. The air is heavy with silence. Then the fever hits. It starts with a chill. Just a little shiver at first. Then your teeth clench. Your hands tremble. Sweat breaks out across your forehead even though the air is cool. You curl up on the quilt pile, but nothing helps. Your skin is hot. Your bones ache. Your mind starts spinning. You remember everything and nothing. You think about Skeeter, about Boone, about the woman who told you her cow wouldn't die. You think about the fire, the river, the pan full of glitter that wasn't gold. You remember laughter, a harmonica song, your own voice once shouting into the wind for help that didn't come. You drift, then float. The fever deepens, wrapping around you like wet wool. In some distant part of your mind, you know this is how a lot of folks went. Not from bullets, not from bandits, but from a cough, a shiver, a bad sip of water. Historians still argue whether the Wild West was won or simply survived, one fever dream at a time. You stop sweating. That's when you know it's bad. Outside, your mule waits, loyal, bored. You see someone in the doorway. It's Skeeter. Or Boone. Or maybe just your mind, painting comfort where there's only dust. He sits beside you and hums a tune you almost remember. You close your eyes and sleep. You wake to a dim glow. The fire. Someone made a fire. You're covered in a blanket that doesn't itch. A damp cloth rests on your head, and there's a pot bubbling, real broth, thin but warm. You try to speak. A rasp escapes. The figure stirs. It's Boone, or someone like him. Still kicking, he mutters. Shame, I bet against you. You sip the broth. It's salt and life. The fever breaks sometime after that. You sleep again. This time, you dream about soft beds, clean water, and silence that doesn't threaten you. In the morning, you're weak, but alive. You sit on the porch again, this time upright. Your mule nuzzles your shoulder. You don't push him away. You stare at the land. Still endless. Still hard. But today, it doesn't hate you. It simply is. You gather your things, shake the hand of your mysterious savior, who might just be real after all, and ride toward the sunrise. You survived sickness. You survived the West. Barely. The saddle doesn't feel so cruel now. The breeze brushing your face carries less sting, more hush. You ride slower, deliberately watching the prairie stretch wide and gold beneath a sky turning silver with evening. Your mule's hoofbeats become a lullaby, steady, rhythmic, softened by the dust. Your body remembers every bruise, every sunburn, every strange-tasting bean, but the sharpness has faded. Even the worst moments, fleeing fire, shaking with fever, dodging rope-happy mobs, have turned into echoes, dulled by distance and the gentle passing of time. You pass a single tree, standing alone like a quiet sentinel. You tip your hat to it because that feels right. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote calls, not a threat tonight, just a voice in the night chorus. The sun kisses the horizon, melting into amber. The stars will follow soon. You think of the people you met, Skeeter, with his baffling luck and surprising wisdom. Boone, sharpening knives and speaking truths. The sheriff who didn't care, and the woman whose cow defied mortality. Each of them carved into you like notches on a rifle stock. You don't know where you'll go next. But for now, it's enough to sit easy in the saddle, to feel the ache without resenting it, to breathe in a world that once tried to break you and now just lets you ride on. You lean back, close your eyes. Let the night take over. Let the wind carry you. Because out here, in the land of dust and silence and the endless ride forward, you survived. You're still here. And for now, that's all you need.